And here we are, everyone. Once again, I am joined by two very talented individuals. Debra Lamb is with us, and Itai Guberman, and they're here today. I don't. This is something I don't normally do, but I do occasionally enjoy talking about campaigns because I've heard so much about how difficult these are to crowdfund indie films. And so Atai and Deborah are here today to talk about Shadows of the Night, an unhinged paranormal horror. First off, Deborah, glad to have you back. How you doing?
Hi, I'm so happy to be back, Mark. I'm doing
Glad
well, thanks.
glad to hear it. And Atai, how are you doing?
Not too bad at all. But yeah, good to be here for the first
Mhm.
time. Although, Deborah seems to be a regular.
She's starting to. She's starting to become a regular. I do like your mask in the back there, Atai. Or
Yeah,
the
that
the the,
that's
the
how I
head.
look first thing in the morning. I wake up with hair and then it's gone.
It just yeah, mine's slowly going myself. So, I don't know who would want to, but, why don't you, just give a little brief thing of what Shadows of the Night is going to be about?
Well, do you want to have the honors, Ty? You can go first and then I'll go.
That's fine. That's fine. You can go. It's all good.
Oh, you want me to go?
Sure.
Okay, so I'll go. So it's brains before beauty.
Or both. It's brains and beauty before
Brains
me.
and beauty. I don't know what we're doing here, but she's the brains and the beauty, so there.
I took the brains, you can have the beauty.
Uh,
So anyway, yeah, and our director, producer, writer, Todd Ernest Braley couldn't be here today because he's on the road having an adventure. So Ty and I are bellying up to the bar, so to speak, as we are both producers on Shadows of the Night. I've been aboard Shadows of the Night almost from the beginning. Todd started it off he was planning on doing a short film version. And then, and of course, being a friend of his, I saw what he was doing. I thought it was great. I'm like, yeah, this is really cool, Todd. And he put a teaser trailer out. I really liked it. And then I saw he posted that he was going to actually make a feature film. And I was really, really happy to hear that. I was like, all right, Todd, because the film that I was in, that I worked with Todd before in, called You Like to Draw, that started out as a short film. And the story was so good. I was telling Todd, hey, Todd, you really need to make this a feature film. It's deserving of a feature film. You're wasting such a good story doing a short. So, I was able to talk him into doing the feature and it came out great. We did that a few years ago. And then on this one, when I saw that he posted that he was going to make a feature film out of it, I was really happy. And then I spoke to him not too long after that. He actually wanted to talk to me about being in it. And when he told me the whole story, because as my career flourishes, I am getting more and more selective, and especially when it comes to horror, because I became so well known for doing horror films. I was really ready to just um ex-nay on the horror. It's like, okay, no more horror films. I just wanted to be known as, look, everybody, I'm an actor and I do all sorts of films. And, it became really annoying to me that just people just thought of me as a horror actor or actress, and not as just an actor. So
Mhm.
when Todd asked, when he talked to me, we did a video call and he said, now, I know you don't, this is exactly how he started out. I know
Mhm.
you don't like to do a lot of horror or anymore.
Mhm.
And he said, but I want to talk to you about this film. So he told me the story of the film. This is a paranormal thriller, and the just the paranormal aspects of it. And it's very dramatic. It's very realistic. This could actually happen. Um, I'm well aware of the paranormal. I've had my own share of paranormal experiences. Todd wrote this because of his own paranormal experiences. So I felt that this film being made is going to be truly terrifying, but in a very dramatic way, not like horror, not the kind of horror that you normally think of as horror. So so I was happy to come aboard, and then soon after that I shifted gears and came on as a producer. And Itai has been very good friends with Todd for quite some time. And so Itai has been Todd's writing partner on this, so to speak. I mean, the story is by Todd and he wrote the initial script, but I know Itai had quite a bit to do with the script himself and his work as a producer on this film. So Itai, why don't you take it away now?
Yeah, Todd came to me with the script that he actually came up with his son, Jaden. So they had this sort of basic premise, to do with the story, which has something to do with a true story that happened to Todd. So when he told me, the story, I said, "Oh, that's really cool. But what do you want to do with it?" And at the beginning, he wasn't sure. Short film, feature film. I said, "No more short films. Put that away. This can easily be developed into a feature." So in about a 20-minute conversation, just developed it all the way to a feature. And yeah, and we wrote the script together, and we've been going back and forth, additional drafts ever since. So yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. And then Todd asked me, "Do you want to help me produce it as well?" I said, "Of course. Why not? I love the story. I don't get excited about many film ideas generally." Because again, I've been around indie for a long time. I know how things work, and I'm not a big fan of derivative work. Basically, just taking Hollywood films and almost remaking those stories, just not as well, obviously, in indie. I've seen that happen way too many times,
We see
especially,
that all the time. I've seen
yeah,
so many films that are just clear, obvious knockoffs.
yeah. Every slasher film is a knockoff of
Yeah.
mainly Halloween, but all kinds of stuff.
Or
Um,
Friday the 13th or Texas
yeah,
Chainsaw Massacre.
which is also why I say to people all the time when they come to me with certain films, I say, sorry, I'm not a fan of fan films either. It's like if you want to do that kind of thing, that's fine, but I will never be involved in it because it's just not my kind of thing. I prefer to come up with original work and find points of difference, from Hollywood. Sort of put indie on the map for doing something new, something interesting, and not for redoing other stuff. And Todd is also like that. He thinks in the same way. So I think that's why we connected, and that's why we kept pushing with this one as well, because it felt, even though there are similarities in some ways, obviously, to things that have been done before, there are all kinds of points of difference along the way to make this original enough and interesting enough on its own.
And I don't.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
No, I was just gonna say, I know you don't want to give too much away about it, but I have it involves the dark web, according to
Yeah,
the Indiegogo, and
Mhm.
based off the pictures, some very creepy supernatural, paranormal stuff going on.
yeah.
We can tell you the basic story
Sure.
because Todd has already revealed it. So
Oh, okay.
but it's basically about Jamie, a 15-year-old girl who is kind of like an amateur computer hacker, kind of,
Okay.
and she goes into the dark web and sees an exorcism from the 1970s, and the girl who is being exorcised in the video starts talking to her.
Oh,
Through
well,
the
that's
Yeah,
camera. Through
oh,
the
that's
camera.
mhm,
cool. That's very
yeah.
cool.
She
While
addresses her
she's watching
directly.
it, yeah,
Yeah,
Hey.
and
while
she's
she's watching.
she's basically asking for her help, and then it all sort of develops from there. But it's something that we may have seen before in some sort of way, but not quite like this. And I couldn't pinpoint it either. I couldn't go, oh, this is like that.
Sure.
It's a little bit, as far as Todd is concerned, it's a little bit inspired by some very big sort of horror films that scared the crap out of him when he was little, namely The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Sure.
Inspired by, but the story is not at all like
No.
The
No.
Exorcist. Not the same at all.
Yeah, and that sounds.
But it has elements,
And
Yeah.
it sounds
It's
very interesting. It sounds very interesting. And I mean, if you talk about originality, Hollywood has been borrowing or influenced or whatever you want to call it from itself since the last 100 years. I mean, on our podcast, we've been covering earlier films this last few months. A lot of them, some newer stuff, but older stuff. And you look back at that, the 1931 M. We just talked about how many
Good song.
crime procedurals borrowed from that film, and how many borrow from so many other films, and they're because that's your big influence, and it's just you give it a spin, and this sounds like it's got a nice creative spin to kind of the talking spirit and exorcist angle, and that has me intrigued. And making it dark web, you kind of make it hip, right, for the young folks.
Yeah. Yeah, and the lead actress of our film is Lillian Davis, or Lily Davis, and she's a newcomer to film, but she's very talented, and so this will be her debut film performance, but she's going to be really great in this lead role. I've seen footage of her, and she's very good, a very good actress, and so she's going to do really well. And she just has that she has the right combination of a young person who's a little bit tough on the outside, but also very vulnerable, and she's young and just doesn't realize what she's getting herself into.
Sure.
She views herself as a hacker, and so she's a little cocky, but she bites off more than she can chew.
But and again, I like that subject, and then it's got a modern spin because I think some of us folks who grew up with the horror during the what you might say the golden age of horror with the video in the 80s and that us grew up with, uh forget that horror is a young person's genre in the end of the day, for the most part. I mean, it's the 20 somethings, the teens sneaking at the time sneaking in, or your parents would just, it's the 80s, so the parents would just take you to whatever horror movie it was, regardless of the rating. But it's kind of always been a young person's genre, but in the last a number of indie films keep trying to do homage films and try to do it. Oh, we're gonna make an 80s slasher. It's kind of like what you were saying, Itai, where we're doing an 80s slasher. It's like, well, that's great for you, but if you want to bring in new blood, you got to work in more modern elements. So it sounds like that's what you're doing with this script, is you're bringing in stuff that 20 somethings in that, and maybe late teens will be able to relate more to, I think.
Exactly.
So that's very cool. So with this campaign, it just started March 1st, and it's in full swing. It's already doing well. I am impressed. And this cast, you have newer comers, and you have some veterans as well. I saw the Wallens are involved in this now.
Yes.
How did you get Harley and Katie involved?
Well,
that was all Debra.
Okay. Harley and Katie are friends of mine.
Sure.
And I worked, I've known Harley and Katie for, several years. And a few years ago, I actually auditioned for a film called Finding Nicole. It's a true crime story about a real life person named Nicole Beverly, who was in a domestic violence, they call it a Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just getting intimate. They call it an intimate partner or intimate domestic violence situation where, you know, her husband
Sure.
was had abused her terribly, put a gun to her head, and then there was a court case. Well, he went to prison, and then he actually tried to take a hit out on her while in prison or jail. I'm not sure exactly technically which one he was
Sure.
in, but there was a court hearing, and it would look like the court hearing was over the fact that he, you know, not only did all these things, but, you know, also was
Right.
putting a hit out on her. So when I went to go shoot Finding Nicole, it was in August or late August into September of 2022. I did that film. So, but the writer was there. Nicole Beverly was there. So Katie Wallen plays Nicole. She plays Nicole. Of
Sure.
course, in the film, it's a different last name, but she plays
Right.
Nicole. And then I play her mother. So I play Nicole Beverly's real mother, who I did get to meet while I was out there. And so that's how I know Harley and Katie Wallen. I knew them from before. We were friends before. In fact, I went to a couple of their premieres in LA in the years prior to that. But then I was cast as to play
Nicole's
the
mom.
role,
Yeah.
the role in Finding Nicole. And so that's how. And then Harley and Katie and I, well, last year when Todd was working on the script for Shadows of the Night, I thought that there might be a role in it for Katie. So I was talking to her about it. But then when he finished the script, there were no like other roles that I
Sure.
could have put her in. But there was a role that I had another friend of mine who was going to play the role of the psychologist. So this year, you know, when we restarted getting back into pre-production again, the friend of mine, another actress who was going to play that role, she can't do it in August. She's very busy. So she just wouldn't be able to do it at
Sure.
that time, which gave me an opportunity to call Katie and see if she were interested. And I was very happy. They read the script and they liked it a lot. And I was able to get Harley in another role in the film as well. So that's how we end up with Katie and Harley Wallen. But we have to give all the credit to Itai, even though I do know Bill Oberst Jr. And in fact, we were supposed to do a couple films together. There were two films we were going to be cast in together, but both films either ended up with different cast members or just didn't happen at all. So we hadn't had the chance to work together yet. But Itai gets all the credit for getting Bill Oberst Jr. So Itai, why don't you talk about that?
Bill, aside for being an actor that I'm a big fan of and have a lot of respect for, we've also been friends for the last few years. And we've always said, you know, we were looking for a project to do together at some point, because I'm also a director, and you know, I thought maybe the opportunity will come up, or I'll always keep it in mind. But when Todd and I were thinking about cast for Shadows of the Night, we were talking about a certain role, and at one point we were potentially going to have a bigger budget. So Todd had a list of names, and I just kept saying Bill Burst Jr., Bill Burst Jr. for this role. He'd be perfect.
Sure.
Because when as we were writing the script, I always had Bill in my mind, you know, when I was sort of visualizing. And yeah, when certain plans fell through, we kind of went back to basics and started reshaping the script, and also, you know, recasting, and well, not recasting as such, but just ideas. And I said, so what do you think about Bill Oberst Jr.? And Todd just looked at me and he went, that would be perfect. So I was like, okay, you want me to get on that? Yes, please. So, you know, I got onto that, and yeah. So Bill's going to be in the role of Bishop Dwyer. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Really look forward to that.
I'm a big fan of Bill's as well. A number of years ago, I finally got to interview him. It was great talking to him, but I've admired his work for a long time. I mean, if people don't recognize his voice, then you're not watching enough indie films because he, especially for a while, he was very prolific. I mean, he is now, but definitely, I would say, 10 years ago, especially, he had that span of years to where he was in all kinds of projects. I mean,
Yeah.
what a very hardworking individual. I love his talent, and so it's great that you have him in this film because regardless of the role, he's gonna fit. He's gonna fit the role. He's
Yeah.
very versatile too. So that's really great that you got him. And so you have this cast of veteran actors along with younger actors who have only done one or two films. So I guess what kind of challenges do you run into with that sometimes?
I
Well,
guess we'll know soon enough.
yeah.
I guess you'll know. Well, Deborah maybe might be able to speak to it a little more, but just what do you run into it, especially doing it for an indie project?
Well, I've seen that numerous times because I have done my share of low budget indie projects where they are only able to afford maybe a couple recognizable names, and then the rest of the cast is fleshed out with local talent, people
Mhm.
that who they know, people who may not have had a lot of film experience, or in some cases none at all. So when I worked with Todd on You Like to Draw, I was able to bring on a friend of mine. I don't know if you know who this is. Do you know Trista Robinson?
I don't think I'm familiar with her. No.
Okay, she worked with Mark Savage in Purgatory Road. I don't
Mm,
know if you remember
Fantastic
that.
film.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Hmm.
very good. I loved Purgatory Road, and I love Mark Savage. He's a great
Hmm.
Hmm.
director.
A, a,
And of
a
course,
fellow
she did.
Australian.
Oh,
A
yeah.
fellow
Oh, he
Australian. Yeah.
is. Okay,
Yes.
that's cool.
Hmm.
Um, but she was in some notable films, and
Sure.
she's a big talent. So I asked her if she'd be interested in playing one of the roles in You Like to Draw. She played the
Mhm.
aunt, and she was amazing in it. She was really good. So we had myself and Trista come in from Los Angeles, and the rest of the cast was made up of local Grand Junction, Colorado
Mm,
talent. And, there were a few people that had uh, very little, or a
mhm,
few people had none experience. But the people that didn't have any film experience, they actually did some theater. So they
mm,
had some
mhm.
acting experience. But Todd's a very good director. So he was able to work with the people with less experience. And then Bree Frank, who is also Bree Frank, who is playing Lacey in Shadows of the Night. She's the one in the exorcism video from the late
Oh,
1970s.
mhm, sure.
She's Jamie's paranormal person that she
Mhm,
keeps saying. So she played the lead role in You Like to Draw, and she's extremely talented. I saw some other projects that she worked with Todd on years ago, and like there's this one film called Silence
mhm.
about
Hmm.
date rape, and she was a character in that, and she was very good. So everything I've seen Brie in is she's always very good. So she's at the time she was living in Grand Junction. So even though she doesn't have maybe a prolific film credit
Mhm.
list, she's quite talented. And then there are some other really talented people on You Like to Draw, um, the ones that didn't have maybe formal
Right.
film,
Mhm.
presence. There weren't any films before that. They were all very good, and Todd did a great job with the ones that didn't have as much experience. So on Shadows of the Night, we have Lily Davis, who this will be her first film, but she's very talented. It's clear to see. So I don't see
Mhm.
any issues with um once Shadows of the Night is completed and
Sure.
an audience finally gets to view it. I think they're going to appreciate everyone's talents,
Mhm.
and including the people that maybe don't have, film work
Sure.
behind them.
Mm.
We have Peter Goldthwait, who is playing, what's the character name, Itai, that he's playing? Peter.
Father Benchley.
Yes, yes. So he's playing a priest, and he has an extensive theater background, but he's really excited to finally get to jump into film work. So, but he's very talented,
Sure.
and I don't think it'll take much for Todd to just get him acclimated to being in front of the camera. So I think we're doing pretty good with our cast members. I think actually let me rephrase that. I think we're doing very good with our cast members who may not have a long IMDb list of credits. So
Was there
I'm very
a you mentioned that you reached out to a few folks that you already knew. In true indie spirit, usually that's what ends up happening. You get a good group of people, and they kind of travel with the same director, or end up working on the same projects a lot because they work well together.
yeah.
Was there though auditions and such for some of the roles, and reach going through a vetting process for some of the roles that you've got so far?
Yes,
Absolutely.
definitely. Yeah, Lily Davis, she did audition for the role of Jamie. She auditioned. I know that Ramirez,
Ramirez.
she's
Yeah.
playing she's playing Jackie. She auditioned. And also a good friend of mine, Jeff Berry, who I'm bringing on the production. He's going to be working as the UPM.
Oh,
And
okay.
but also when we thought we had a much bigger budget, there's a role of a teacher in it. And I was talking to my friend Dawn Most about playing the teacher, but that's when we were going to have a much bigger budget, and it was going to be a SAG film. Well, now that we're not quite at that level of a budget, now, of course, it's going to be non-union. So Don Most, unfortunately had to pass on it. So that role I thought would be perfect for my friend Jeff Berry, who I worked on in Finding Nicole in
Sure.
Harley and Katie's movie. And Jeff was the UPM on that film, or no, I think he was the production manager on that shoot. And I actually stayed with him at his house for while I was there for 2 weeks. So I got to be really good friends with Jeff, and we've kept up, a great friendship since then, since the shoot. And so I thought he would be a perfect Mr. Hall, Mr. Jonathan Hall, the teacher. So he auditioned for us, and he was excellent. So we did have a audition process for a lot of the roles.
Sure. Well, yeah, I was just wondering if there was a bit of vetting process. I mean, some
Yeah.
that I've seen indie films, everybody, hey, we've worked on this project, let's work on this one, and there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that,
Oh, of
especially
course.
if you find some folks you can work with. Now, Atai, how much pre-production has been done already on this? Is everything pretty much laid out? You're just waiting for the trigger to be pulled with the money, or you mentioned the script's gone through a number of revisions. Where is it at as far as the pre-production goes?
Pre-production is in full effect.
Sure.
Todd is actually finalizing some agreements on locations at the moment, but everything is pretty much set up. I'd say about 95% is
Oh,
already
nice.
locked in. As far as most things, cast, crew, the script itself, and yeah, we're just kind of now waiting to see what kind of budget we'll have to work with, and just waiting to get there. I'm
Yeah.
actually flying
Sure.
from Australia to the US for this one, so that's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, that's a long trip. Although
Mm.
my coworker would be envious. She likes to travel out that way, so she but yeah, I mean that's great that you got most of it worked out, and it's pretty much just waiting for that trigger to be pulled. Now I was looking through some of the tiers, some of the um the featured
Campaign.
benefits,
Hmm.
the pay,
Perks.
perks. Thank you. I
Yeah.
lost my word. Now one of them is act in the movie. Now I wish I had the money to contribute to that, but how I was always curious on this, and I'm glad I have you both here because I was wondering, how do you work that into the film if you're not quite, I mean, do you have like a role kind of set aside for whoever if that tier gets taken, or is that, how does that work with the act in the movie?
We have a scene that is
Mhm.
basically happening in an asylum,
Okay.
and there's a lot of the perk itself is actually called be a mental patient. So we
Yeah,
have roles for all these mental patients that need to be seen, and some are actually heard from in the
sure.
background. So they might have a couple of lines.
Mhm.
So that's what that perk is about, pretty much.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
the title of that, Be a Mental Patient. I'm like,
Hmm.
that's another thing I wish I had the money for it because I could be a mental patient. It's not that far of a leap for me. Uh,
Some of us might have to be after this production.
so because every production is tough. You also have your face in a movie and the voice in the movie. Are those things that would be like in the background or like voiceover for radio stations? Is that what those are kind of intended for?
There's a couple of things with the voices. Some of it
Mhm.
is the voices being heard by ghosts and
Mhm.
voices that the main character hears. Others are like sort of school PA systems, that kind of thing.
Cool, cool. So yeah, I was
Yeah,
always
I think there's a couple newscasts in the movie
Mhm.
too, so that
Mm,
could
that's true. Yeah.
possibly come into play.
Hmm.
And do you have an asylum picked out, or is that going to be a set on the or are you working to get an actual asylum to shoot in? I should say.
But we had a couple of close ones that we
Hmm.
almost locked in, and at the moment, Todd is finalizing terms on another. So those tend to sometimes fall through. So fingers crossed, this one will be locked very soon. So yeah.
Yeah, it's probably most likely going to be a location that can pass for an actual
Sure.
asylum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We had real asylums that we were looking into
Yeah.
getting, and for one reason or another, it was a no-go. One of
Sure.
them was scheduling, and then also because they tripled their price,
Hmm.
because they got so popular. I don't know if I should mention which one, but so we will not be using that one.
Yeah. And also again, some of it was when we potentially had a much bigger budget to
Yes.
work
Sure.
with.
Yeah.
Hmm.
One of the asylums was, if I'm not mistaken, in Michigan,
Well, that was the
and
Eloise Asylum.
yeah.
Those that's the one that they tripled their price recently because they were on TV. The show, the Josh Gates show.
Hmm.
So I love the Travel Channel. I love Josh Gates. So it was one of his shows that
Hmm.
they featured on his show, and that was last summer. Last summer, they did a show at the Eloise Asylum, one of their Expedition X shows,
Sure.
and it was a really good show. So, and then it played all summer long. It kept coming on, and in fact, it just came on TV again, just kind of recently, like in the last couple weeks, it came on again. So then when we were very close to booking that place, and then later because we kind of had to back off of production for a little while because things weren't, we had to wait for money
Sure.
for money.
Yeah.
So so then when he was getting back to it, he checked with them and they had tripled the rate. Yeah, so because they got so popular,
So we could blame Josh. Then we'll blame Josh
it's
for that.
Josh Gates' fault.
It's Josh Gates' fault. Yes, we'll blame
Yeah,
Josh Gates.
it was also a scheduling issue because we had to
Yeah,
sort of move the production. So yeah,
Sure.
yeah, that too,
and then
because
we
they were
had
so booked. They were booked up all the time.
Mhm.
yeah, and then we potentially had one we were going to use in Utah, and that also fell through because of scheduling. And now the one we might use is actually in Grand Junction, where we're shooting most of the film. So that's actually might actually be a better situation all around
Yeah,
in the end. So yeah.
yeah,
I was going to say that when you're doing the location shooting, I imagine for when you have your limited budget, you have to take that into account. What can we possibly use in the area so you don't have to pay for extra travel, trailer, move equipment, all of
yeah.
that as well.
Yeah,
Well, I
absolutely.
hope that location really works out for you because that sounds like it'd
Mhm.
be more convenient for you then. Uh, you know,
Todd,
it's go ahead.
oh, I was
I
going to
think we're
say,
going to say the same thing, I think.
but Todd has found some really great locations all in the area.
Mhm.
Is that what you were going to say, Itai?
I was going to say, he recently did a
Yeah.
Facebook Live at a walkthrough when he
Oh,
was
yeah.
checking out a couple of locations. So yeah,
Yeah.
so those are online.
Yeah.
So once you get once the campaign is finished, which again it's you've got some stretch goals in here as well, or it's announcing if you hit one, you're going to have a stretch goal. I'm not sure what it is. It's going to be secret. You got to hit that 10K first.
Yeah.
But once the campaign closes and you actually start on production, how much time do you have in for principal photography for when you're doing this? Do you know
Well,
Well,
we're
offhand or
shooting in August.
or
We have
shooting?
our
Mhm.
schedule.
Okay,
We're
you got
shooting.
your schedule. Okay.
Yeah, we're shooting at the start of August, or
Okay.
or the last day of July.
Yeah. And yeah, roughly a 20-day shoot. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I was curious on that if it was like 5 days or 20 days because I've heard, you know, it's indie films, so you never know.
Yeah, yeah. This actually, the way the script is, it has multiple locations, so we're going to have to move around a fair bit. It has a lot of characters, so it's as Todd and I both sort of put it, it's a step up for us as far
Sure.
as the scope of production from projects we've done in the past, which is, exciting, because we're trying to up the ante with every, excuse me, with every project that we do.
Yeah.
So yeah, this one's going to be an interesting one.
But on the other hand, since everything now is going to be in Grand Junction, it's going to be a lot easier.
Sure.
Before,
Yeah.
with thinking that we might have the Utah asylum, we'd have to shoot in Grand Junction, move
Yeah.
over to Utah, come
Mhm.
back, So
Mhm.
this really simplifies things, and it'll just make for a quicker, easier production.
Yeah, travel times will be a lot shorter. That's going to
Yeah.
be, yeah, going to keep things contained.
Oh, and I was going to say too is that um we did really well. We did do an Indiegogo a year ago,
Mhm.
and we ended up getting, I think it was just under 9,000, or it was over 8,000. But we also
About
had
9,000, yeah.
it was what?
It was about 9,000, yes.
Yeah, okay. And then but we also have a private investor who,
Mhm.
came on board
Sure.
last year. And then of course this year's Indiegogo is going really well. We made, it's a thing now that people know to do, is to try to get 100 people to contribute on the very first day. And if you get
Sure.
100 people, you go straight to the front page, front of the line.
Mhm.
Well, we did
Mhm.
that. We got over 100 people on the first day. We actually made our goal. We let's see, what was it, Itai? Did we make our goal within days? It
Yeah, within
was,
about 3 days, we
yeah,
made the
we
Nice.
made,
5,000
yeah,
Very
goal.
nice.
yep, we made our 5,000 goal in 3 days, and we were on the top page or the front page of the Indiegogo website within hours of, that day, that
Nice.
the first day. By the end of the
Mhm.
day, we were on the very number one
Sure. Project. Yeah.
campaign on
Mhm.
the website. So, and then we still stayed on the front page for a few more days. But we are looking for private investors.
Sure.
A few of us have, we're working on getting private investors.
Mhm.
I know I am, and Itai is, and Todd is, that we have people that we've been speaking to about coming on board as private investors. And so I'm sure that we're going to get a good portion of the total budget that
Mhm.
way too. But it's all
Well,
going
Mhm.
really well.
that's
Yeah, we're probably almost halfway through the campaign at the moment.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, we're definitely going to need a big push, over the next 2, 3 weeks to
Sure.
finish it off. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it's being successful. It looks like it's going to be a very interesting film for sure. It has my interest peaked for sure. But Itai, I just have to ask. I talked to Deborah already in a different interview, asking what made her, she dropped what made her get into this business. What about you? Why indie film? Because everybody says I do something else if you can.
Yeah, that's what I always say.
And that's what Deborah said.
Yeah, yeah. I get asked that specific question actually about what would I advise, people who are just starting
Yeah.
in the film, and I always say my advice is don't.
Don't
Yeah,
go do something
because
else.
yeah, I think being any kind of
Uh,
artist these days, it's like if you're not ready for a struggle, then don't do it. If you want the easy way, do something else, because it's not about fame and fortune. It's
Mhm.
about the art itself. It's about creating something and what that gives you. It's unlikely, let's say, to make you very rich and famous.
Mhm.
So if
Very
those are your
unlikely.
motivations, don't
Yeah.
do it. For me personally, I think I was always a big fan of movies, and from a very young age, I was always like watching films. I knew all the actors from all the films, and and I don't think, as I sort of grew up, I don't think I entertained thought of going into film for those specific reasons. It was always drilled into me that you need to have something a bit more stable.
Right.
Um, and even when I finished school and I went to university, I went and I did a business degree
Mm.
because I was like, well, I don't know if I want to work in business, but I want to have something to fall back on.
Sure. Mhm.
So having a degree was very important to me, and I chose to go that way. But even as I completed it and I was sort of in the business world and all of that, I think I knew that that wasn't really me as
Sure.
such. Something was missing, let's put it that way. And I started with filmmaking as a hobby.
Mm.
My very good friend who has since passed, Peter Angel, he came to me one
Mm.
day. We always talked about film. We were big fans, and he said, "Why don't we try to make a short film just for fun?"
Sure.
He said, "Let's start with a script. Let's write a script together." I was like, "Okay." So, we did the Seinfeld thing where we just sat down and he says, my character says hi and your character says hello, and we go from there. And we did.
Sure.
We wrote a script. We wrote
Mhm.
this sort of short crime comedy, 10-minute film called The Collector.
Mm.
And then this was like early days of internet. This was, well, not so much of internet, but maybe of internet forums and
Sure.
that kind of
Yeah.
thing. It was about
Mhm.
2004.
Mhm.
Um, and we got online and we got some people who had the expertise we needed. So we got a cameraman who was also an editor, and he had his own equipment, and he came on board. And then we got our friends to help out with other things, and we got a few actors, and did the whole audition thing, and went out and shot it, and sent it to a few festivals, and it was accepted, and we're like, okay, that's enough for us, and sort of put that away. We then thought about, because Peter wanted to be a producer and I wanted to be a director, so that was like a perfect match.
Yeah.
And we did the writing together, which was always easy and fun. And we tried to make a feature film and very quickly realized we're not going to have enough money for this.
Sure. Mhm.
So we had some problems. We had to do some reshoots, and we realized that's not going to happen. Plus, Peter's wife got pregnant, and he was like, "Okay, I'm going to need to step away from this." So we both did. Um,
Sure.
and at that point, I moved from Australia back to Israel, which is where I'm originally from,
Mm.
and realized I had some time on my hands, and I thought I might go and do another degree. And I thought, why not go to film school? See what that's about. So I did that, and I did a master's degree in film and television.
Nice.
And very, very quickly, I realized that that was always a need that was within me, because I have all these stories in my head, and if I don't let them out, I will probably end up a real mental patient,
Sure.
not a fake one in a film. So yeah,
So
so
you
that's
went to
where the
you went
motivation's
to
from.
film school in Israel?
Yes,
Very
Tel Aviv
cool.
University. Yeah.
How did you end up in Australia?
I came back.
He came back.
I was born in Israel, and my parents, when I was about 14 years old, this is in 1988, moved to
Oh,
Australia. So
Oh,
I grew up here
sure.
from 14, you know.
Hmm.
I went back to Israel for visits and stuff like that over the years, but I only moved back when I was like 34, 35.
Oh,
oh,
And yeah, and after 11 years roughly in Israel, I decided to move back here because my dad passed away. My mom was sort of getting older, and I realized I want to spend as much time with the family as I can while I can. So I moved back to Australia.
oh.
So
well,
I've done the back and forth.
you done the back and forth, absolutely, and that's very interesting, and I'm sure you find indie filmmakers everywhere, though. It's a global thing,
Absolutely.
you know.
Yeah, I've
I
worked with people in Israel, in Australia, and
Mhm.
now in the US. So yeah,
I think I think that's something that everybody within their own little bubble of whatever existence might not think. Oh, well, indie films, Western, but there's independent filmmakers across the world doing exactly what you're, doing here as well. And this is being a global production in itself. We got a tie in, Australia. Debra's in
hmm
LA. So, and here I am in the middle of Wisconsin. So the joys of the internet, right?
Well, I'm from LA, but I'm actually living in Northern California, but
Ah, well,
close
so
close enough. Close
sorry,
enough. We're
didn't mean to insult you to say that you're living
no,
in LA. No, I just
not not at all. But for, people who know me, I don't want to
sure.
confuse them. They're like, "Wait, you're in LA? I thought you were up north." But no, if you're in LA, why aren't you coming and seeing us?
With how often people move in California, from my understanding, yeah, I
Yeah.
can understand that could cause confusion. Going, when'd you move back? Why
Right,
didn't
I
you tell
know.
me?
It's like, darn it, why couldn't you come to my birthday party then?
Well, thank you both, folks. Check it out. I'll put a link to the Indiegogo on this podcast for you to go and contribute. And I'm a big supporter of indie films, and even if I can't do it financially, I like to get the word out. And this is definitely sounds like a project that is worth investing in. Just even for a copy of the movie, folks. Physical media, as you can tell, I'm a big supporter of that too. So even that is a perk as well. And sometimes, that's worth it alone to make sure you get a copy of the physical media or digital copy. So it's Indiegogo, it's Shadows of the Night. Now, do they Google it? I'll put a link down below. I actually, in all honesty, Googled Shadows of the Night first, and it had the campaign ended. I actually had to follow a
That was
that's the
link.
last year.
previous one.
That was the
Right.
year before. Yeah.
Right. So I just want to warn the listeners that if they just go to and search, it'll actually bring up the first one and show that the campaign has ended. But it's not ended. We can assure you.
Yeah, I think it's under Shadows of the Night, something
Unhinged,
unhinged.
Paranormal,
unhinged
paranormal
paranormal
unhinged.
horror.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What
That's why
what
that
is
was sort
it?
of added to differentiate.
So it's the
What is
Unhinged paranormal.
Shadows of the Night, unhinged paranormal horror.
Yeah,
So if you
yeah,
search
there
for
you go.
that, you'll hit it, folks, because I know a lot of people
Yeah.
like to Google out there. So
Yes.
yeah. So
But
look at
Mark,
yeah.
I was gonna say about the collection behind you. Very
Yeah.
impressive. I
Oh,
was gonna
thank you.
ask you how many do you have there? Because I assume
I
that's just a section of it.
I that's it's full on the other side as well, and that's just my DVDs and Blu-rays. It's not including the 4 shelves of VHS I have over here, and
I
the
have the same.
yeah, and,
Yeah.
and I have about a stack of about 15 to 20 laser discs as well. So about
Oh,
Wow.
the
Laserdisc.
so the only thing I don't have are CEDs, but my buddy has those. So he's got a player that actually works as well. So yeah, I've
Yeah,
got
Wow.
I still have VHS and I don't have a player anymore, so that's interesting.
oh yeah, yep, nope. I still got my player here. Occasionally I'll digitally transfer it if I find an odd one. I have so
Mm.
many that when if I ever actually get a chance to retire, I have plenty of time to watch to occupy my time with for sure.
You'll be
Yeah.
like the guy. You'll be like the guy in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, yeah.
Only instead of books, it'll be films. I
Instead of books, it's filled. Yeah.
I have shelves of books as well. So yeah, so I'm set for retirement because without
you're a
retirement, I'll never get to this stuff.
There you go.
I have quite the collection myself. I had a huge VHS collection,
Mhm.
but because I was moving around so much, I had to get rid of most of my
Sure.
VHS tapes, of course, except for my stuff. I mean, there's a lot. I have a lot. I have a fan who pretty much has every single VHS thing that I'm
Mhm.
in.
Wow.
It's a pretty big collection. I was impressed. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I have all these things. Incredible.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of physical media, and what you hear in the news nowadays, if you're not paying attention, you should support it again because you've got services now left and right closing up shop. You've got them just pulling movies never to be seen again. Some of these
Yeah.
indie filmmakers, that's why I was happy to see the physical perk on here because some indie filmmakers only do the digital and whatever server or service they're using suddenly that server goes down, boom, that's
Mhm.
gone. And
Yeah.
here you've
Yeah.
and it's signed too. I love that it's signed. It's a limited edition signed Blu-ray. Always love the signature as well. I've got my Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers signed by Fred Olin Ray.
Oh, I love
He,
Fred. I
he
did 3 films with Fred. You probably already knew that.
he signed it, and they sold a bunch on Amazon, but some of the ones they were selling on Amazon he had signed ahead of time that they put in inventory, and so I've got one of those. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah, but you got a lot of great perks. You're both very talented individuals, and yeah, folks, check this out. Check out this campaign, and if anything, what is one thing that you hope when the film comes out? Is it just entertainment? Is this going to be a thinking film? Itai, will go, I guess, with you first. What do you hope someone might get out of this film once it hits the streets, so to speak?
Um, Personally, as a writer and a filmmaker, I'm
Mhm.
sort of more of a proponent of the thinking film, as you
Mhm.
put it.
Sure,
Not so much entertainment. And when we were talking about this script, um, we were thinking, what is the problem with a lot of indie horror today?
sure.
And we've sort of honed it down to the fact that films are made today to gross you out,
Yeah.
not to keep you entertained so much, or not to keep you interested, not to kind of make you think. And we want to do both. We want to entertain and we want to make you think.
Mhm.
But grossing you out is not so important to us. So, everybody talks about films now. It's like, oh, it has the best kills, and
Yeah.
and Todd and I
Or
straight away have
funniest.
that. Yeah, and we straight away have that question. What about the story?
Mhm.
Right.
Because sometimes they just don't really have one.
Right.
And and we wanted to make sure that that exists. We wanted character development, and that's what we want, or we hope that people would appreciate about this story. That it's an interesting plot, a good script,
Mhm.
interesting characters, and all that. It's going to have some gore, but not as much. And you know, I'm a big proponent of sort of Hitchcock's way of thinking, where you don't have to see it happen
Right.
to see it happen.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I believe that the best kills actually happen off camera.
Oh,
Um, so we have a mix of that, but I think that's kind of what we're going for. Not
Mhm.
so much you know what has become known as tits and gore. Really,
Sure.
that's not really our thing. There's no nudity in this,
Mhm.
and not as much blood as maybe people would like.
Sure. Well,
What do you
that's
think, Deborah?
hmm?
What do you think about that, Deborah? I was
Well, yeah.
asking.
Um, so what I was going to say is what I would like for this film is it to have a wider audience and that more people get to see it.
Mhm.
This is going to be a really good quality, very quality production. I mean, everything about it. We have an amazing cinematographer. We have amazing sound. It's going to look extremely polished and professional. We have a great cast, as you know. and really great locations. We're able to make a very high standard film on a relatively low budget. So we're, especially Todd and Itai and myself, we've been working very hard behind the scenes to make sure this is going to be just a top-notch film. So my wish, and it's going to be really scary, like truly scary, not
Sure.
gross and bloody, and because horror films don't scare me. There are very few horror films that scare me. There are films that will shock you or that like horrify you in a way, but not like truly scary. Like, then that's what I was saying at the top of the interview, was that I was excited to come on board this project because it's more dramatic, you know. I mean, it's under the horror genre, but it's really a paranormal thriller. And so I felt that the script was very scary. In fact, Bill Oberst Jr. made a great video for us where he talks about just how scary this script is. And then he's saying things like, oh, I don't want to try to do a Bill Oberst impression, but he's saying he's saying why the audience should contribute to this film. And he's like, but is it really scary? He says, and I should know because I know scary, you know, whatever it was he said. It was he did such a great video for us. And so I agree. I think this story, this film is going to actually be truly scary. But it's going to be really good. It's, you know, so that's what I hope, is that this film finds a bigger audience, because that's that, you know, I'm in a lot of low budget independent films.
Sure.
And the main issue for me as a performer and sometimes producer on some of these productions is that the films aren't getting a wide, they're not getting like a big release. They go on Amazon, they go on Tubi. You know, you have the people who know everybody in the cast and crew, and then other friends and supporters, and they see the film and they all see the film. And, you know, and then outside people, they do see the film, they do find these films. But when you get a bigger release, and, you know, yeah, it's all in the distribution, and then, you know, and then more people will see it. So that's my hope for it, is that more people get a chance to see this film.
Well, me too, and I hope I get a chance to see it as well.
You will.
Thank you.
You're going to be in it. You're going to be in it. You're going to come out and be a mental patient.
I'm already a mental patient, so it's not going to be that much of a stretch. So thank you, Itai. Thank you, Debra. Check it out, folks.
Thank you.
And look forward to when it's completed. Maybe we'll have you back.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you.